Greetings, groovy people. Welcome to the channel. I'm the self-proclaimed Blue Dragon. This week, I want to discuss the cover art that I'm working on for the comic Fury Zine in Dreams, which is going to be coming out this July. I wasn't sure if I was going to do a piece for it this time, but we had plenty of space and I figured it'd be nice to have 6 full comics in the zine, so I decided that I was going to go ahead and throw my hat in again. What I'm going to do in this video is just kind of go through the process of what I was doing for this cover. I kind of did some things that I've never done before. There is a tablet in this video, but it's not mine. It's being borrowed from someone. But I've never had tablet use before, so I kind of fumble around with it. I've just been using it as kind of references. But I talk a little bit about the process, what's going on, why I'm doing it, all that. Next week, we're going to have a much longer video. It's going to be the last of the sketchbook tour videos for the 2015 to 2021 sketchbook. So that's going to be coming to a completion. So just for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about when I say the comic Fury Zine, it's a free zine that members of the community put together to help showcase some of the comicers over on the Comic Fury site. The primary goal is to provide entertainment and draw in new readers while also bringing awareness of Comic Fury and all the awesome indie artists over there on our site. So it's a promotional tool, but it's also to help, kind of connect readers who are looking for good comics to what we have on the website. And we do it like biannually, so 2 times a year. We've got the summer issue and then we've got like a fall winter issue. This is the Safe for Work zine. We also do a not safe for work zine. Since we did a summer not safe for work last year, we're doing a safe for work summer this year and kind of like putting the not safe for work at the end of the year just to kind of alternate between those. So with the zine, we at the moment have a limit of roughly 5 pages for the story proper, give or take a little bit. And we don't have a requirement to have a cover for the comics just yet, but in 2023, we are going to require a cover and then up to 5 pages, give or take, depending on how much space we have left in the zine. So what I'm working on in this video is the cover for my submission, which is going to be a one-shot featuring Reina from my free Not Safe for Work webcomic, Dark Horse. Those links are down in the description. And the theme is in Dreams, so I'm pretty sure I'm going to title this little story What Dreams May Come, and there's a reason for that, not just because, I've read a lot of Shakespeare, in my day, but also because of the context of that being in Hamlet's soliloquy and kind of being foreboding of bad things to come. He's specifically talking about just the situation he's in. He's kind of like lamenting having been put into this situation and whether he should just end it all and not have to deal with it. Not have to deal with the guilt of confronting his uncle. If you're not familiar with the soliloquy, you don't have to read the whole poem to find it fascinating. But it's a really good soliloquy taken out of the play. And so that's kind of why I chose the What Dreams May Come. That, and also there's a Robin Williams film that's fairly serious. It's one of his more serious roles, which is kind of dealing with what happens in the afterlife. It's a very interesting film. I haven't seen it for years, but I remember coming away from it with kind of mixed feelings. I'm not sure how I would feel about it today, but overall, even though I think I did have kind of some criticisms for the film, as you do often even with films that you like, but I'm not sure how I would view it nowadays. But it was a very good film, and it was one of those covers that always drew me to it because it is dreamlike. It's what dreams may come, but it's, at least from my remembrance, the old cover was very orangey. It's Robin Williams in the clouds, and most of it is just the expanse of the clouds. From my remembrance, I don't think he's taking up the majority of the image unless they've since changed that. But I really liked it because the visual of the cover was very striking to me. Even though I may not end up coloring this like that at all, that was something that was kind of in my mind. That was one of the reasons why I have Reina in the clouds here. Those were kind of the inspirations for the cover. In addition to, I wanted to kind of have a reminder so that people who are reading the comic are fully aware. Reina, this whole story, starts kind of like in the 1990s, late 1990s. So in Reina's dream, she's dreaming of all like these things that she's always really loved in her own like present and childhood. So she's flying on Swiftwind, or a horse that looks like Swiftwind, and she's wearing clothing that is a combination of Xena, warrior princess, She-Ra, princess of power, and Serenity, or Sailor Moon, princess of the moon. So that's kind of like, I tried to like combine all those elements, although a lot of it does get covered up later on by the time I get my completed piece. But I wanted to make sure that it was very clear that she is a 90s kid and this is not taking place in present day. This specific scene, for those of you who aren't reading Dark Horse, over on Comic Fury, I've completed a chapter called Time Warp, where all the characters have gone to the present day, or future as the girls are considering it, but it's technically present day that they travel to with Shimiko and Odysseus. And they're camping out in the Sequoia National Forest before they get captured by a military group, which we'll find out. I mean, it's pretty obvious who they are. But at any rate, this specific scene is supposed to be taking place that evening after they fall asleep and before they get kind of captured. The reason why I wanted to specifically tackle this sequence, which I'm not going to talk a lot about, but is because in the story proper, I haven't really had a lot of opportunity to kind of demonstrate how these events are affecting the characters. We're going to see more of it, but I thought this would be kind of a cool scene where Reina, who has very vivid and visual dreams, we've already had one dream sequence, actually two dream sequences, they kind of happen back to back in the story proper. But back in Act 9, the one that I'm working on right now, Battle Royal, she basically gets consumed by this gelatinous blob. And I want this dream sequence to kind of be combining her, generally speaking, optimistic point of view. She normally has like very weird, imaginative dreams, fun dreams, but it's going to be interceded by her anxiety and apprehension over having almost just died. So that's kind of what I wanted to do with the sequence. I'm not having anything be like super graphic, but the cover I intentionally want to be all bright and bubbly because that's traditionally how Reina is in the comic. And then it's going to move into the darker before the end of this 5-page sequence. That's the context of what's going on. The cover is setting up the scene. And I really had a lot of... I kind of went at this a little differently than I do sometimes because I ended up... Okay, like recently I've been drawing like separate portions of the comic individually on separate pieces of paper and then combining them together and, you know, like inking them afterwards. But this time, because a lot of the elements were so big and I couldn't fit everything I wanted on a single 8.5 by 11 page, I decided I was going to try something different. I did all the elements kind of separately. I have Rin, I draw her first. I kind of draw the horse. I get the basic sketch. I take my thumbnail from my sketchbook and do a larger thumbnail to help me better place where things should be. And I'm using references throughout all of this. After I get that initial sketch down, that larger thumbnail or draft, I move into drawing the elements more individually, just so that I could make sure everything is proportioned right. I wanted to make sure the horse's head wasn't too big or too small. Something else that I was very conscious of is, in addition to like having her 80s and 90s cartoon and film, or I should say popular culture influences, I wanted to make sure that the clouds were kind of done in a Japanese style, and I didn't want to like steal anyone's art, so I do in this video sketch out my own pattern using references, but you know, doing my own thing, as well as making sure that the horse didn't look completely like, you know, She-Ra's horse, her friend and companion Swiftwind. I also kind of included, like, I wanted it to look a little bit Lisa Frank inspired, just because that was something else that was very big at the time period, and she would have really kind of been into that, you know, at least liking the folders and shit like that. So I tried to make the horn and eyeball be evocative of that with the horse itself. But the clouds I wanted to look more Japanese because she's American, but her mom is half Japanese, half American. So I wanted to kind of include that in her dream. Also, I just like the aesthetic. Let's face it, I just like the aesthetic. With the horse, I wanted to keep the swirly kind of theme. I wanted to have that kind of connected because the horse has swirly, you know, hair, kind of curly hair. And Xena, if you look at like her outfit, she has kind of that swirly design over her breastplate and kind of extending downward. I don't think I did that very well, but it was really kind of hard for me to conceptualize even how to draw that since it is so incredibly three-dimensional, but it works. It works for what I'm going to be doing. It's fine. Her outfit's going to change soon enough anyway, but I did try to incorporate all those elements. She's got the schoolgirl skirt, she's got the Sailor Moon tiara, and the little, instead of having She-Ra's winged mask, like the 80s version, not like the newer one. Which I did like. I'm not like shitting on it, but it did not exist yet in my story. But instead of doing that, I went ahead and went more with like the Sailor Moon aesthetic, but then I kept She-Ra style hair because I thought I was getting too far away from She-Ra. And the sword that Reina is holding in this image is foreboding something that will be coming much later in the story. And that sword does have a name. But I guess it's not really much of a spoiler, but each character is going to have like their own magical weapon at some point in the story. I guess that's not really a spoiler. But that's kind of like just discussing all the elements in this, and the reason why all of these elements are there is because it's all part of Rin's imagination. It's not just me wanting to like spew out 80s and 90s nostalgia. These are like kind of the things that she's dreaming about because she does have such an active imagination. So that's what's going on with like the image itself. To talk a little bit about the process even further, after I had sketched each individual element, and I've been really inspired by this book that I checked out by Mark Curley. If you don't know who Mark Curley is and you're struggling with art, I highly recommend his, or manga art specifically, but he does everything. I highly suggest his YouTube channel. It is just phenomenal. At any rate, this book, Manga Art, I checked out from the library, and it has, like, you know, just different art pieces that he's worked on, but each individual piece, he always incorporates, like, a couple paragraphs or a paragraph of what he was thinking and what the purpose and what his intent was with this image throughout the book. And then, like, he also sometimes has, like, these challenges in the book to get you inspired and working on things, too, not just enjoying his art, but also encouraging the reader to do some drawing as well. So this has been like a really cool book. I like that it's not just a showcase of his art, that he not just talks about like the ideas behind it, but also is really like supportive of inspiring other people to create their own art. One of the things that kind of inspired me, and this was not in his book, but he's been talking about like challenging himself with different techniques and trying to think outside the box to challenge his own habits that, you know, he knows that he likes to do tight lines, so there are times when he will challenge himself to be more scratchy and more loose and make things not feel quite so polished. And so what I was thinking, because one of the local studios that I sometimes go to events at, they have like a collage night, and I was thinking, you know, all my elements are separate, and I've never done this before. Like, I've always just inked everything separately and then put it together in Photoshop and resize things as necessary. But what I decided I was going to try this time, because also of an experience I had when I was taking student at large courses, and my professor had said, this looks like a collage, this looks like something that is the prelude to a different piece, or just like the study for another piece. I thought, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop all of this sketching into Photoshop, and then I'm going to collage those images together, get things proportioned the way they should be proportioned, and then I'm going to print it out and then I'm gonna ink it from there. So I know that it probably doesn't seem very novel. I mean, some of you out there probably have already come up with this yourselves, but to me it was like the light bulb just popping over my head. Oh, instead of messing with it in Photoshop and going from there, I want to actually have like this whole thing inked solid because I want to try to color it with Copics. And if I do that and just print it off, I mean, that, you know, I'm not going to have it printed off on good paper. So it was kind of like a couple different influences leading me to this technique that I've never done before. So that's what you're going to see me messing around with whenever I get, if I haven't already, whenever I get to the portion of the video where I'm messing around in Photoshop. I then printed that off, and I also made sure to size this cover the size that it would need to be to scale properly for the Comic Fury Zine. So that was another thing that I did before printing it off. I did that while I was in Photoshop. And so now, yeah, I was able to print that off, and then I just used my light box to trace what I'd done and, you know, kind of fix up the inking. And I'm going to be coloring that. I will probably color it digitally at some point, but I'm also planning on coloring it with Copics to see how it turns out. And if I like it, that's what I will use for the comic before going to black and white. So yeah, that was kind of my idea behind this image. I'll show you what the finished inking looks like at least. I just wanted to kind of share my process behind this because I was so excited to come across something new. I don't know how much I'll be doing this process, but if you have a printer at home and, you know, you wanted to try something like this also, I definitely do recommend it. It really saved me quite a bit of work, and then I was able to get like that finished ink piece, and it was just kind of a fun way of doing things. I'd never done it this way before. I'll keep everyone updated on when the Comic Fury Zine comes out. It's probably going to be between July 1st and July 15th of 2022. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to drop them down in the description below. Otherwise, thank you all for watching, and I also want to really thank my patrons and my Subscribe Star member for supporting me. I really appreciate that, you guys. It really means a lot to me, and it really does help me out. So thank you so much for your support. You rock. I'll be back next week with another video. Peace and love. Fare you well. And keep on trucking.